Welcome to this video at looking at the different parts of the face and looking for the details that you want to include when you're developing your portrait or your figure to that next level that's including an emotional content. Like in the other videos, I'm set up here that I'm working from myself, so I have a little mirror that I'm able to angle and so look into it or look down at it, but angle it so that it's sort of as if I'm looking at it straight on and that it's nice and close. Again, like the other videos, I'm going to be using pencil for this video. In this video, we're going to look at the mouth and the aspects of the mouth that we need to be aware of when we're wanting to capture, as I said, some of that emotional content into our portraits. The mouth is one of the key parts to observe. It expresses a lot. And yet it's probably one of the easiest of the features to get wrong if you don't observe some of the little subtleties to it. And I think probably because of its simplicity, actually, it leads to that, not maybe getting it completely right. If you think back to when we've talked about the proportions of the face in a previous week, remember that the width of the mouth in the classical proportions lines up with the pupils in the eyes. That's the proportions that we're looking for. And that in some people this will be narrower, and in other people this will be wider, depending on the individual. Your lips are made up of a upper and a lower lip, and each of them echo in some respects one part to the next. If we look at the top lip to begin with, it can be wider or it can be narrower. You tend to find in most people that one, either the top or the lower lip, is wider than the other. Some people, they can be similar. But basically there's a structure to it in that our upper lip will come up to differing degrees, down into a valley, up into another peak, so we're talking about these being the peaks, and then out again like so. The key thing about these two peaks is that these two peaks correlate to the septum, which that's that dip that falls under the nose. So that's what you need to watch in terms of when you're observing the placement of these peaks, that they line up with the septum. You then have the lower lip. Now the lower lip actually does a very similar thing in that it has peaks, a valley and a peak, and a valley and out then to the outer edge. What you will notice with the bottom peaks and valleys is they're not, or they tend not to be as pronounced as the upper one. Sometimes it can almost appear non-existent, but there is usually a slight indentation there of some degree. The last thing then is the line that separates our upper and lower lips, our mouth, and that follows a similar pattern in that it comes from the outside. At this stage I'm going to do this all like one, and we tend to have a little hook here, like a parrot's beak. And that's the thing to look for. Some people that can be quite pronounced. Again, that's with all these things. And in other people, it's not so pronounced. So they're the main features to be looking for. Now, as I said before, is that these can vary, this can vary, the width of this and the width of that can vary. So you can end up with a whole range of different mouth shapes, like so. But they will share all common features. Principally, the top lip having peaks and valleys, the bottom lip having peaks and valleys, and that line, the mouth line, having a slight parrot's beak of some description. The next thing that we need to observe is, I'll say, the quality of edge to some of these things, and principally is that middle line between our line of our mouth. As you can see in these examples, I've tried to just do them as a single weight of line. What you need to observe, and it's to a degree on the outside edges as well, but mainly principally in that middle line, is, and we've done this in some of our exercises drawing gum leaves and things, of that idea of a heavy and a light and a heavy and a light, heavy, light type line, and that this sort of indicating lost and found edges almost, is that as soon as I start to draw a face, or a mouth I should say, and I'm starting to include a little bit of heavy and light in those lines as well, but let's look at principally that in this one, if I start with it heavier, work towards it lighter, work towards it heavier, lighter, and heavier, is that immediately that has a more of a realism to it and a feeling of depth than any of my previous ones here too. So this is a key aspect, is to observe the weight of that line that forms between the upper and the lower lip. Don't be tempted to just be drawing or even painting a continuous solid black line like that. You may even find that these edges here can disappear, and that particularly when you're then dealing with it in the tones, which we'll talk about in a minute, is that when you have observed, is that you may only see a heavy there and there too, and that then it's a difference in tone between the upper and lower that finish those edges a little bit more. Now that we're starting to talk about tone, is that there's two key things happening when we're looking at lips, is that we have an upper lip, and as I said, and a lower lip. That upper lip, because of the angle, it's going inwards like that, and then the bottom lip is protruding like that, if we were to think about them in profile, is that because of that inward angle of the upper lip, is that it tends to be darker in tone. So immediately, if I then start to mass a darker toned upper lip, and this is what you'll have started to notice even in doing your self-portraits, or even when you look at Florence, this is what happens to her, is that she has quite a pronounced darker upper lip, and then our lower lip tends to be, because it is protruding, catching the light. And this is in the beginnings of starting to see some of those shapes and that edges start to form. Let's even some of this out because we've got it out of control there. Oops, starting to push this a little bit too far. So you're looking for that too, those changes of tone like that. The next thing to observe is that usually we've been talking about 3/4 lighting, so lighting coming from one side of the face. And so that in that case, we also have to consider that not only is this upper lip protruding and this lower lip, the upper lip going in and this top edge protruding, and that then this lip, the bottom part, is then protruding, is that then because of light coming from this way, your lips actually recede here, and it's this part here that tends to stick forward. So in terms of then the light coming, say, from this way here and falling across here, is that then this side of the lips in general will tend to be darker in this case. So that then that top lip on this side here will be the darkest. And that kind of effect will start to happen, for instance. So we've got the lightest part of the lip here to the darkest part of the lip up here of the mouth. If we then start to think about that middle line, is that if we put that, we're going to just put that dark parrot's beak, and a little bit of a dark in there, is that we're starting to get some quite lovely, realistic looking lips. The last thing when we think about then the bigger picture out here is that let's just continue maybe a feeling of light and dark out beyond. And then of course if that septum's there, that's creating a dark up in there, around the chin, and a lighter tone out on that side, is that we also sometimes often get a darkening just under that lip, because this lip is protruding over the chin and so casts a shadow underneath like that, that follows round and maybe falls into another dark that runs maybe along the side of the face there. We then have, as I said, those darks there, and of course then there'll be that slight darkening in there on that side of the septum, and then a little bit more of a darker tone on this side above the lip. something like that. Highlight. The highlights will be in two places on the lips. There's a highlight that will run just above the lip along that edge there. As there's one to observe. You will then sometimes find a highlight somewhere down here. And of course then there's usually a little bit of a highlight there. They're the key ones to look for. Now I'm making these quite obvious. Bear that in mind. So here we have another set of lips, loosely based on my own. And what I want to talk to you about now is taking some of these observations that we've made, how you can be working the lips of your sitter, either as yourself or someone that you're looking at, to a neutral stage like this, and then with your careful observation impart an emotion very easily. And it's just observing what happens to some of these key darks and the shapes that we've got happening here. If I'm to make these lips have a little bit of a gentle smile on them, what will happen is that these here will start to turn up. So it just becomes a matter of just then either looking at your sitter and seeing the position of these darks when they smile and the shape that they create, and that they might just go up there slightly, maybe pull out a little bit further. And I would start to put them in. What also might happen, and this is a common thing, is that this lower part of the lip here, whilst it's quite plump in this case, will start to change shape and maybe go out a little bit thinner, like that. You might also find that this side, this darker, comes out thinner as well. So let's just start to shade in some of this. And there's that little bit of a dark there. Gently shade that in. You probably would find that then just a little bit of a light would appear along there too, under that part of the lip, as it catches the light. That's a bit dramatic, but you start to get the idea. And you can see there with those very simple adjustments, suddenly this is quite a different mood in this face. And we might just maybe just move this one up just ever so slightly too, and just do a little bit of altering. And there, we've totally changed the mood of those lips. Just also remember in your observations that that crease up there across the chin is that you'll start to find that there's a dark that becomes maybe a little stronger in there and here too. And of course things will have changed when you smile, for instance, with the shape of the nose and things here as well. Have a go of drawing your own mouth be drawing it in a neutral way that I have shown you. Also, try and maybe observe it from a different angle too, not just straight on, and see what happens to some of these shapes. Is that you will find they're still there, your parrot's beak, these peaks and pillars, but you'll see that maybe this, particularly if you're looking on the side of the face like this, is that suddenly this part here becomes much more squished because of foreshortening, and this area here becomes lengthened because you're seeing this in a different angle. Make sure you try and do these exercises, if possible too, looking at someone else. The other part now of here starting to look at a face is to do this practicing like I've just done there, of drawing it in a neutral position and then changing it into an emotion. So it can be that you're looking at yourself and you make yourself smile, not grin. Don't want to be necessarily showing teeth. Try and keep it sort of in a more neutral fashion, and then see and notice and look for these slight changes, and you can see how easy it is to incorporate them into your drawing once you've got the basis and have observed all these correctly to begin with. Have a go, good luck, and I look forward to seeing what you've done.